The rain fell in soft sheets over the crowded city streets, turning lantern light into streaks of gold and red. The night market was alive with voices, laughter, and the occasional clang of metal. Evelyn hurried through the throng, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Every shadow seemed to move, every glance felt like danger. She had no plan, only the urgent need to get away from the men who had been following her since she left the quiet cafe near the river. Her fingers brushed against the handles of the stalls, her steps uneven as she tried to keep up with the fast-moving crowd. Her breathing was loud in her ears, her pulse quick, her mind filled with images of what could happen if they caught her. She didn't know who they were or why they wanted her, but she knew instinctively that it wouldn't be kind. In a sudden moment of panic, Evelyn's path blocked by a cluster of people, she reached for the nearest hand she could find. Without thinking, she grabbed it. Cold, firm, and steady. "Wait," she started, but the words caught in her throat. The hand belonged to a man whose presence seemed to command the space around him. He was tall, with broad shoulders that seemed to push the crowd away, and his eyes, dark and sharp, scanned the area with a predator's precision. His grip was firm, almost unnervingly protective. Evelyn felt a strange shock run through her at the touch, a mix of fear and something else she couldn't name. "I've got you," the man said quietly, his voice low and smooth. "Stay close." Evelyn nodded, unable to speak, letting herself be guided. The crowd moved around them like a river, but for a moment it felt as if the world had narrowed to the space between their hands. Her pulse slowed slightly. The terror still there, but now tempered by the strange reassurance of his presence. As they turned into a narrow alley away from the main street, the man's eyes narrowed, shadows moved at the edges of his vision, and in an instant he shifted, blocking her from sight. Evelyn barely had time to gasp as figures emerged from the darkness, the intention clear and dangerous. Without hesitation, the man struck. His movements were fluid, precise, and terrifying in their efficiency. One moment he was in front of Evelyn, and the next he had neutralized the threat with a calm decisiveness that made her heart leap, not entirely from fear. He was not just a protector. He was something else entirely. Something powerful, someone the underworld would whisper about in awe and fear. When the danger passed, he turned to her, his dark eyes softening just a fraction. "Are you hurt?" he asked. I don't think so," Evelyn stammered. She tried to step back to release his hand but found it impossible. There was a weight to his presence, a silent claim that held her in place. "You need to leave this area," he said, his tone no longer harsh but commanding. "It's not safe for you here." Evelyn nodded again, still trembling. She didn't know what drew her to trust him, but she did. Somehow, amidst the rain, the chaos, and the danger, she felt safer than she had all evening. As they walked, she stole glances at him. He wore a long, dark coat, the collar turned up against the rain. His hair was damp, strands clinging to his forehead, and his eyes, dark, penetrating, were fixed ahead, always alert. There was an aura about him, one that suggested power and danger in equal measure. Who are you?" she asked, finally finding her voice. He paused, not immediately answering. Then, with a small, almost unreadable smile, he said, "Someone who doesn't let go of what he finds important." Evelyn blinked. Something in that answer unsettled her and thrilled her at the same time. She didn't know what it meant exactly, but she felt it as a promise and a warning. The alley emptied into a quieter street, lined with closed shops and shuttered windows. Here the chaos of the market faded, leaving only the rain and the two of them. The man finally released her hand, but only slightly, keeping a protective distance that felt deliberate and careful. I should go," Evelyn whispered. "I don't even know your name." He regarded her for a long moment. "I'm Darian," he said finally. The name was simple, but it carried weight, like a secret known only to those who feared and respected it. Evelyn repeated it quietly, testing the sound on her lips. "Darian." "Yes," he said, his gaze returning to the shadows around them. "And right now you need to trust me. There's more danger than you realize." Evelyn felt a shiver run down her spine, part from fear, part from the magnetism of his presence. She wanted to run, but she also wanted to stay. She wanted to understand him, to know why her heart felt like it was being pulled in two directions at once, toward him and away from everything else that threatened her. A sudden sound, a metallic clink from the end of the street, made her jump. Darian's hand was on hers in an instant, firm and steady. He moved her behind a stack of crates, his body shielding hers as his eyes scanned the darkness. "Stay behind me," he ordered softly. "Do not make a sound." Evelyn nodded, her breath catching in her throat. She watched as Darian stepped forward, silent, his movements deliberate and precise. There was something almost supernatural in the way he handled the approaching threat. Every motion was measured, every decision certain. She had never seen anyone move like that in her life. Moments later, the danger was gone. Darian returned to her side, his expression calm but intense. He took her hand again, this time not just as protection, but as an anchor. "I told you," he said quietly. "I don't let go." Evelyn looked into his eyes and felt a strange mix of awe and fear. This man was dangerous. Everyone in the city would know that in whispers. And yet here he was, holding her hand, offering her safety in a way no one else could. The rain slowed to a drizzle and the sounds of the city softened. Evelyn realized that she had been holding her breath, and she finally let it out, feeling the tension in her body ease just slightly. But the thrill of danger, the pull of Darian's presence, lingered. "Why me?" she asked finally. Her voice was barely audible over the rain. Darian's eyes softened, though the darkness in them never fully disappeared. "Because you reached for me," he said. "And once you do, I never let go." Evelyn's heart pounded, and for a moment she imagined what it would mean to let herself fall into this dangerous, magnetic presence completely. But then the distant sound of footsteps reminded her that the world outside this alley was still dangerous, still unforgiving. "We need to move," Darian said, releasing her hand just slightly, but keeping his gaze fixed on hers. "I can't promise it will be easy, and I can't promise you'll understand this world, not yet. But if you trust me, you'll survive tonight." Evelyn nodded, swallowing the fear that threatened to rise again. Somehow, despite the danger, despite the unknown, she found herself willing to trust him. She didn't know why. Maybe it was the way he moved, the calm certainty in his voice, or the strange electricity that had sparked between their hands. Whatever it was, she felt tethered to him in a way she had never felt to anyone else. They stepped out of the alley and back into the night, the rain soft against their faces, the city stretching endlessly before them. Shadows loomed, secrets hid in every corner, and the night promised more danger, more uncertainty. But for the first time that evening, Evelyn felt a flicker of something she hadn't expected. Safety. Not from the world, not from the storm, but from the hand she held and the man who never let go. And as the night deepened, as the city whispered its secrets and dangers around them, Evelyn realized that her life had already changed. One wrong hand in a crowd, one touch from a stranger, and she was caught in a world she could neither resist nor fully understand. The streets had emptied by the time Darian and Evelyn reached the edge of the city. Rain had turned into a fine mist, clinging to their clothes and hair. The market's noise was replaced by the occasional distant cry of a stray animal, or the soft hum of a carriage in the distance. Darian's hand remained close to Evelyn, not touching but never letting her out of his line of sight. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, questions, and the weight of what had just happened. "Why me?" Evelyn asked again, her voice trembling slightly, though her fear had shifted into something more complicated. Curiosity, and perhaps the faintest trace of awe. Darian glanced at her, his dark eyes glinting in the dim light. "Because you reached for me. Because in a crowd of strangers you chose me. That is rare, and I do not ignore rare." His voice was quiet, yet carried the certainty of someone used to commanding attention without raising it. Evelyn shivered, not from cold alone. There was something about the way he spoke, so calm and steady, that made her feel as if the world outside the small circle of light surrounding them no longer existed. But she also knew that the night was not safe, that danger had not vanished, only shifted. Darian led her down a narrow lane between two abandoned warehouses. The walls were high, covered in dark ivy, and the shadows seemed to lean closer as if listening to every step. He moved with a predator's grace, each footfall silent and deliberate. Evelyn had never seen anyone walk like that, so aware of everything around them, so sure of each movement. "You need to understand," he said softly, "that tonight is only the beginning. There are things in this city, people who will not forgive the mistake of your presence. They will come for you, whether you are aware or not." Evelyn swallowed hard, her fingers curling nervously. "I don't understand. Why me?" Darian stopped and turned to face her fully. His expression softened slightly, though the shadow of danger never left his features. Because you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And yet, in that moment, you made a choice. That choice made me notice you. And once I notice, I do not let go. His words were calm, almost hypnotic, but they carried a weight that made Evelyn's chest tighten. She wanted to ask more, to understand the strange pull between them. But before she could, movement in the shadows caught his attention. Darian's body tensed instantly, his hand brushing against the hilt of a concealed weapon at his waist. Evelyn froze, heart hammering, as three figures emerged from the darkness. Their movements were careful, deliberate, and dangerous. "Stay behind me," Darian whispered. Evelyn obeyed, pressing herself against the wall as his presence shielded her from view. The men approached, unaware that Darian's eyes were already calculating every possible outcome. Within moments he had shifted, using the shadows to his advantage. One was taken by surprise, another hesitated too long, and the third faltered at the sight of Darian's silent, commanding stance. In less than a heartbeat, the threat was neutralized. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. How did you do that?" she whispered, almost afraid to speak. Darian's expression softened again, just slightly. "I protect what matters," he said. "Tonight, that is you." Evelyn felt a strange warmth spread through her chest, something she had never felt before. It was not just fear or relief, it was connection, magnetic and undeniable. She wanted to understand it, to name it, but every attempt seemed to fail under the weight of the night. They continued through the misty streets, the city now quiet, almost eerily so. Darian led her to a small, unassuming building on the outskirts, its windows shuttered and doors heavy with iron. It smelled faintly of wood smoke and leather. "This is safe for now," he said, opening the door. Inside, the room was sparse but clean. A small fire flickered in the hearth, casting a warm glow over the space. Evelyn could see the lines of exhaustion and focus etched into his face. And yet there was something tender in the way he gestured for her to sit. "I don't understand any of this," Evelyn admitted, her voice low. "Who are you? What is this world?" Darian hesitated, then sat opposite her, his gaze steady. "I am Darian, and this is my world. Dangerous, yes, but controlled. I have spent years building it, shaping it, keeping it from falling apart. And tonight, you were pulled into it, whether you meant to be or not." Evelyn felt a chill, but not from the fire. "And yet you protected me." He looked down at his hands for a moment, a rare vulnerability in his expression. "Because I do not let go of what matters. And sometimes what matters finds me in unexpected ways." The words lingered between them, heavy and intimate. Evelyn's mind raced with thoughts, questions, and emotions she couldn't name. She had never met anyone like Darian. He was dangerous, yes, but there was a strange magnetism in his calm, controlled presence that made her want to understand him, to trust him, even when her instincts screamed to run. For a while, they sat in silence, the fire crackling, the rain tapping against the windows. Then Evelyn spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why me? Why not someone else?" Darian's eyes met hers, dark and unwavering. "Because you chose. And because once I notice, I never let go. I do not regret noticing, even if it complicates everything." Evelyn's heart thudded painfully in her chest. She wanted to retreat, to tell him that this was too dangerous, that she should leave. And yet, part of her wanted to stay, to understand the man who had saved her life and yet held her in a grip that was both gentle and impossible to resist. Suddenly, the quiet was broken by a faint sound outside. A whisper of movement, a shadow against the wall. Darian's hand was on hers in an instant, firm and unyielding. "Stay close," he said, his voice low. Evelyn nodded, the warmth of his touch grounding her even as fear surged again. Darian moved to the window, peering into the misty night. His eyes were sharp, calculating. Evelyn could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his mind raced even as he projected calm. She realized that he was always alert, always ready. That was who he was. Protector, predator, and something else she didn't yet understand. When he returned to her side, he did not let go of her hand. "You should rest," he said softly. "Tomorrow will be complicated. There are forces that will not forgive your presence. You need strength for what is coming." Evelyn nodded again, unsure if she could sleep, unsure if she wanted to. The weight of his presence was both comforting and overwhelming. She wanted to ask more, to demand answers, but the exhaustion from the night, the adrenaline, and the rain made her body betray her. As she closed her eyes, she felt his hand still holding hers, and a strange, almost terrifying thought crossed her mind. She did not want him to let go. The fire flickered, casting shadows that danced across the walls. Outside, the city slept, unaware of the bond forming within this small, dimly lit room. Evelyn's last conscious thought before sleep took her was of Darian's eyes, dark and steady, and the unspoken promise in them, "I do not let go." Hours later, she awoke to the sound of the door opening quietly. Darian stood there, cloak damp from the lingering mist outside. He did not speak, only gestured for her to follow. Something in his movement was urgent yet controlled. Evelyn rose, heart pounding, and took his hand without hesitation. They moved through the city streets again, but this time, the night felt different. The danger was closer, more personal. Darian's presence was both a shield and a warning. Evelyn realized that her life had changed forever, and there was no going back. As they reached a hidden passageway, Darian stopped and turned to her. "Tonight was only the beginning," he said, his eyes searching hers. "You have been pulled into my world, Evelyn, and once that happens, there is no escaping it." Evelyn's chest tightened, a mix of fear and an inexplicable longing. I understand," she whispered, though in truth she did not. She only knew that she could not leave his side, could not pull away from the grip that both terrified and captivated her. Darian's lips curved into the faintest smile, just enough to unsettle her. "Good," he said quietly, "because I never let go, and now, you are mine, whether you want it or not." Evelyn swallowed hard, the words sinking into her heart. She did not yet know what being his meant or how deep the danger ran. But she knew one thing with certainty. She could not imagine letting him go. Dawn arrived slowly, pale and fragile over the city. The rain had ceased, leaving streets slick and reflective, mirrors to the world above. Evelyn followed Darian through a labyrinth of alleyways and hidden doors, her mind still racing from the events of the night. She had slept little, haunted by the weight of his words, the intensity of his presence, and the unspoken promise that she could not escape his world. "Where are we going?" she asked, trying to sound steady, though her voice betrayed a tremor. Darian's eyes scanned the streets, sharp and alert, as if the city itself might spring to life with danger. "Somewhere safe," he said. "For now. But safety is relative in this city. You've stepped into a world where power is measured in fear and loyalty, and trust is a currency few can afford." Evelyn's stomach tightened at the thought. She had thought the worst was the night's chase, the shadows that had threatened her. Now she realized that the danger was more subtle, more constant. And yet, despite the fear, a strange confidence had begun to grow inside her. She trusted him. She had no choice but to, and the knowledge that he would not let go offered a fragile comfort. They reached a tall, narrow building tucked between two abandoned warehouses. Its windows were shuttered, and a faint plume of smoke rose from the chimney. Darian led her inside, moving silently as if the walls themselves might betray their presence. "This will be your refuge for the day," he said. "Rest, eat, recover. You'll need your strength for what comes next." Evelyn nodded, though she was not sure she could sleep again. She studied him as he moved about the room, preparing a simple meal from the provisions he had brought. There was something methodical in his movements, a calm order that contrasted sharply with the chaos of the streets. And yet, in every motion, there was an undercurrent of danger, a reminder that he was a man who could control the world around him, and the people in it, with a single decision. "You could tell me everything," Evelyn said softly, sitting on the edge of a narrow cot. "About who you are, why the men were after me." Darian paused, glancing at her with those dark, penetrating eyes. "There are things in my world that cannot be spoken lightly, and some truths are dangerous even to those I care for, but..." His voice softened just a fraction. "I will tell you what I can. You need to understand the world you've stepped into, if only to survive in it." He sat opposite her, the firelight flickering across his face. "I am Darian. I hold a position of influence in this city, one that few dare to challenge. My enemies are many, my allies few, and my choices often carry weight that can change lives in a heartbeat. And tonight, you became part of that world whether you realized it or not." Evelyn listened, heart pounding, as he spoke with a calm authority that left no room for argument. She realized that every word, every glance carried a subtle command. There was no one else like him. No one who could command fear and trust in equal measure. And yet, he continued, I chose to protect you. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because once I noticed someone, I never let go. The words hung in the air, heavy and intimate. Evelyn felt her heart twist in ways she could not explain. She wanted to ask him why, to demand reasons, but the thought of pushing for answers made her vulnerable in a way she had never allowed herself before. Suddenly, the sound of a faint knock at the door shattered the fragile calm. Darian's head snapped up, eyes narrowing. Stay here, he ordered softly. Evelyn obeyed, heart racing. She watched as he moved to the door, every step measured, every sense alert. A shadow shifted outside. Darian opened the door slightly, just enough to speak to the figure on the other side. The visitor was a messenger, delivering a sealed note with a wax emblem she didn't recognize. Darian took it with a slow, deliberate motion, his eyes scanning the seal and the paper inside. His expression darkened, shadowed by a storm of thought and calculation. Evelyn noticed the change immediately. The calm, controlled demeanor she had come to rely on shifted, replaced by the subtle tension of a man who knew the stakes had suddenly increased. What is it? She asked, unable to hide the concern in her voice. He hesitated before speaking, a rare vulnerability showing in his eyes. It's a warning. Someone has noticed your presence. Someone who does not forgive mistakes and someone who will not stop until they have what they want. Evelyn's stomach clenched. What does that mean for me? Darian took her hand in his again, firm and grounding. It means that the night is far from over. It means you are now fully part of my world, and it means that I will not let you face it alone. There was a weight to his words, a mixture of warning and promise that left Evelyn both terrified and strangely exhilarated. She wanted to pull away to escape this dangerous pull, but the truth was clear, she could not. She trusted him, and for reasons she could not name, she wanted to be near him. Over the next hours, Darian prepared for what was coming. He explained, in as much as he could, the dynamics of his world, the silent rules that governed loyalty, the invisible lines of power, and the unspoken debts that could be called in at any moment. Evelyn listened, absorbing every word, trying to reconcile the man who had saved her with the dangerous, commanding figure he revealed himself to be. You need to understand one thing, he said finally, locking eyes with her. Once you are part of this world, there is no turning back. Choices matter. Loyalty matters. And trust. Trust is everything. Evelyn nodded slowly. Her mind reeled with everything she had learned, everything she had witnessed, and the unshakable pull she felt toward him. She realized that she had already crossed the line into his world, and that line could not be erased. That night they moved together through the quiet city streets. Darian led her with a careful balance of protection and command, always aware of every shadow, every sound. Evelyn felt a mixture of fear, exhilaration, and a strange comfort in his presence. The bond between them had grown beyond the simple act of holding hands in a crowd. It was now a connection forged in trust, danger, and unspoken understanding. They reached a hidden courtyard at the center of the city, surrounded by high walls and locked gates. The morning mist had given way to the first weak light of day, and the courtyard was eerily still. Darian paused, turning to Evelyn. Here, he said softly, you will be safe for a moment, but understand this. Danger does not wait for comfort or daylight. It follows always. Evelyn's heart pounded as she looked into his eyes. There was a fierce protectiveness there, tempered by something softer, more human. For the first time, she felt that he might not just be her protector, but someone who could care for her in ways she had not imagined. I trust you, she whispered. Darian's hand lifted to her cheek, brushing away a strand of damp hair. Good, he said quietly. Because I never let go, and now, neither will you. Evelyn's chest tightened, and for a moment the world around them fell away. She saw not just the city, not just the danger, but the man who had become her anchor in this storm. She realized that she could not, would not let him go no matter what came next. The sound of footsteps echoed in the courtyard, distant but deliberate. Darian's eyes narrowed. They are close, he murmured. Close enough that you must be ready. Tonight we face more than shadows. Tonight, we face choices that will bind us together or separate us forever. Evelyn swallowed hard, her hand slipping into his. She felt the steady beat of his pulse beneath her fingers, the strength in his grip, the quiet promise in his eyes. Whatever was coming, she knew they would face it together. The first light of dawn broke over the city, illuminating the wet stones and casting long shadows across the courtyard. Evelyn realized that she was no longer a stranger to this world, no longer a frightened woman clutching at a hand in a crowd. She was part of something larger, something dangerous and compelling. And Darian, the man who had saved her, who had held her hand through fear and uncertainty, was not just her protector. He was the gravity that had pulled her into his orbit, and she was powerless to resist it. Darian's gaze softened, yet the edge of danger never fully left his expression. "Whatever happens next," he said, "remember this, I do not let go, and you will not let me go either." Evelyn nodded, her heart full of fear, hope, and an unnameable longing. In that moment, she understood the truth of his words. Their lives were now entwined, bound by trust, danger, and the unspoken promise that neither would ever release the other. And as the city awakened around them, with its secrets and its shadows, Evelyn felt a strange certainty. No matter what came next, no matter the enemies, the risks, or the choices, they would face it together. Because some bonds once formed could never be broken.